Hello and welcome to What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him. There's a dog crawling on me currently. This is a show that we talk about football, and we're about to do our power rankings. This will be the first power rankings that I've put out. I wanted to watch some ball, gather some information, see the first quarter of the NFL season before I decided who will be the top 10 in terms of chances to win the Super Bowl. That's my main criteria. And bottom 5, who's competing for that last place position. Some of them have their first round draft pick, some of them don't. Spoiler alert, I guess we'll see what happens. James, how you feeling, buddy?
I'm doing great. I love the foreshadowing there. It'll be a very draft work this year.
I'm excited to talk about it. Mr. Miles, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. Doing good. I don't think I did super well gambling-wise, apparently, but I didn't actually bet, so actually I'm way ahead.
Yeah. If you would have bet, your life would be way worse right now. We will have a gambling podcast, has already been posted to the channel. You can go check it out. We are recording on Tuesday night while Jacob Marshall is still on mute. We are recording on Tuesday night, and I will post the gambling one as soon as possible, the power rankings one as soon as possible after that. Jacob, how you feeling, buddy?
Great, dude. Happy to be here. I'm excited to be back. I know I was what everyone was waiting for. I know it's been a while since I've been on the pod, so.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the big bump in numbers now that Jacob Marshall is back on the podcast. Speaking of which, people are actually watching like these long form videos. Numbers have gone up. If you are returning to this podcast, please subscribe. And I appreciate you watching. So thank you so much. Or just tell me why you're watching in the first place, because I'd really like to know. Either way, moving on to my top 10. I'm going to start with 1 because I think 1 is the kind of the obvious one, and then once we get more towards the middle, it's going to get a little bit more exciting. Number 1 should be no surprise to anybody. The San Francisco 49ers, my number 1. Pretty obvious why. They're very dominant. I do have 3
Jamie, can you
stats.
speak up? I can't hear you over all the Cowboys fans crying right now.
Well, spoiler alert, we are not going to get to the Cowboys today in this conversation about top 10 NFL teams right now. 49ers, they haven't really seen anybody good outside of the Cowboys. With that being said, they slaughtered the Cowboys. I think Cowboys, we can all agree, are still at least an above average team in the NFL. 49ers haven't beat anybody else really at all yet. But you got to see something even come close to a chink in the armor of that 49ers team before we put them outside of the number 1 team overall, as my dog looks over my shoulder. Number 2 in my power rankings, the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, this was like my first difficult decision that I had to make. They are 5-0. They're undefeated. They haven't gotten beat yet. They've had some unimpressive wins, if there are such a thing as that, in the NFL. But they did go ahead and kind of handle the Rams, and they are trending in the right direction early on in the season. Sometimes teams take a little bit to get developed, especially their quarterback, which seems like he is humming on all cylinders, just like my number 3 team, the Buffalo Bills. Got off to a very slow start. Now, this is my first team in the list with 2 losses, so that's interesting, but they got to a very slow start against the Jets. Then they started picking it up in the middle of their run. They went 28-point win differential, 34-point win differential, 28-point win differential, and then flew to Jacksonville on Friday and got their ass beats on Sunday morning. So I'm kind of throwing that game out as well. I think the Bills are trending in the right direction, hit a little blip with a massive, obvious training disadvantage or travel disadvantage, rather, going all the way to London town, which is a long flight. Moving on to number 4 on the list, and after number 5, I'll let y'all talk because I know you are chomping at the bit to pick apart this power rankings, is the Miami Dolphins, okay? Obviously, the best offense in the league. The only hesitation I have about them is their defense. Their defense hasn't really been able to stop much. They did lose to the Bills. They kind of got blown out by the Bills. Another reason the Bills kind of maybe came off of a divisional high emotions win against the Dolphins and kind of had another dip after their long flight to London to lose to the Jags. So that's why I have the Dolphins there at 4 and not any higher. And number 5, which may be a surprise to some people, it shouldn't be, is the Detroit Football Lions. Now here is where we're going to get into my stats, okay? Some of you may have noticed I have not said the Kansas City Chiefs yet, which makes sense because the Lions, week 1, went into Kansas City, lost the turnover differential, and beat Kansas City in Kansas City. I don't care who
without Taylor Swift, to be fair.
I was going to say, I don't care who wasn't playing and who was playing, even if it is Taylor Swift. That was a legit win. They've also gone into Lambeau and absolutely slaughtered the Packers. Granted, the Packers looked really bad in the following week. The 3 stats I have for you is pass yardage per attempt, rushing touchdowns, and defensive passing yardage per attempt. And I'll talk a little bit more about these stats a little bit later. But just for scale, the 49ers in offensive pass yardage per attempt is 2nd in the league. The Detroit Lions are 5th in the league at that stat. I think we can all agree one of the most important offensive stats is yardage per attempt. If you're averaging 8-9 yards an attempt, that means every time you throw it, you're almost getting a first down. It's an expression of a highly powerful offense. Obviously, Miami Dolphins lead that category by a lot currently. Running touchdowns. I think rushing touchdowns are a sign of sustainable success as an offense because that means you're controlling the offensive line of scrimmage and you are able to punch footballs into the end zone without throwing it. It's a relatively low risk move. And it's just a sign that your offense is scoring points, obviously. So in my opinion, that's very, very important. For scale, the 49ers are 2nd place in the NFL. The Lions are 3rd place in that real life stat. Finally, defensive passing yardage per attempt. The Lions are 6th. The 49ers are 3rd. Okay? So obviously 49ers, best team in the league, leader in all 3 of these stats across the board on average, okay? Which indicates that these are really important stats. The Lions 5th, 3rd, and 6th in all 3 of those statistics. Jacob Marshall. 49ers, Eagles, Dolphins, or 49ers, Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions. What do you think so far?
I came into this wanting to argue with you on this. I wanted to put the Chiefs up there because of Kelsey being out against the Lions, but I honestly, there's enough of an argument for the Lions there at the 5th spot that I'm not mad at it. Bills, Dolphins, I think you could flip back and forward on that.
I agree.
But with the head-to-head win with the Bills, that's totally fair to have them above. And then, Niners, Eagles, the only undefeated teams in the league, so it makes sense to have them 1 and 2.
Miles, what do you think? Do you think I have the Eagles too high? Do you think I should have the Bills who have 2 losses ahead of them?
So
it's tough to do that.
That was literally my initial reaction when I read your list is like the Eagles, really? And then I'm like, but they are undefeated. And I guess but they just don't look like they're operating well, but they're still getting wins, which I guess is really you said that rushing touchdowns is the most important metric. I would argue the scoreboard is, but I do think going 5-0 at the top makes sense. Bills, Dolphins, just like Jacob said, that's a coin flip. If the Dolphins had their 1 loss against literally any other team in the league, I would want to flip those.
Bad week 1.
But against the Bills, who you ranked above them, that just seems fair. And then I've been live with you for 2 Detroit Lions games this season so far, and in both of them, I thought you were just having like Detroit fan hubris, like y'all like to get. But the Lions are like shockingly looking like a cohesive unit of people who know how to play this game this season, which I have never said that sentence ever. So
yeah, it's a really complete team, the Lions, defensively. That's why I threw that defensive stat into the rotation. And that's been the big surprise to me. I thought the Lions maybe been a year off in terms of maybe a Super Bowl contender legitimately. I think they're a little bit ahead of schedule here with the way this team is developing. Even without Jamison Williams really panning out whatsoever to this point, the Lions have a great defense, and they have, when you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you got to have guys that take over games, right? That's why a lot of these middle tier teams can never win a Super Bowl. That's why I don't even want to talk about them, is because you got to have guys, and Aiden Hutchinson, one of those guys, the way he does that spin move, like he's throwing his elbow into the ear hole of the tackle and just like pancake spin moves more people than I've ever seen anybody else do in the league. And he's got hands. He's got 4 interceptions, just 20 games into his career or whatever, just under 25 games into his career. So they have guys like that on the defensive side. Brian Branch, another rookie. Campbell, just a young, solid core for sustainable success for the Lions looking into next year. But just this year, their only loss, Seattle, which I think we can all agree is a slightly above average team, maybe better than we thought they were coming into the season. They lost at home week 2 to Seattle. Everyone in Detroit thought the world was falling, but guess what? Lions also lost 2 fumbles and had 1 interception, 0 turnovers for the Seattle Seahawks that game. And, turnovers not a very sticky stat. So if you were to replay that game without those turnovers, Lions win 9 times out of 10. So that's what I think about the Lions. I think they are legit. That defense has been really impressive to me, which I thought was going to hold them back so far this year. Mr. James, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I really like a lot of these. I think, the only thing I might change is putting the Lions at 3 and moving the Bills and Dolphins down. I have a lot of question marks with both those teams on the defensive side. And I'm very, very concerned about the Bills with Stephon Diggs. It does not seem like he is on the right page with most of the team. And this Bills team is going to definitely make the playoffs, but we kind of expect to do a first round. I don't think there's a lot going on right now that is pointing in a positive direction, and I think that's a major concern in playoff time.
Yep, and whenever you hear Mr. James talk, I didn't give him a full intro. He is an insider. He knows things about certain players in the NFL. So sometimes when he says there is a locker room issue going around in a certain locker room in the NFL, maybe he knows just a little bit more than what he's letting on. So that's very interesting that James, an NFL insider, actually said that about the Bills locker room. So yeah, they do have 2 losses. Lions only have 1. Maybe I should have bumped the Lions ahead of them, but I just felt dirty as a Lions fan putting them ahead of the Dolphins. So I was hoping.
Do they even have a combined 70 points like this season? Because the Dolphins did that in 1 game. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
The Lions, I'm sure they do. Yeah, they
148 points, Miles. All right.
Fair. And how many games it took them to get that? 5? All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will
side note. Go ahead.
Sorry. One quick note. Another thing to add on the Lions, and then we can get out of their laps. Yes, they played the Panthers this last weekend, but it is worth noting they beat the Panthers without Amon-Ra and Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr, an offensive contributor, and Amon-Ra, a major offensive contributor for them. So even though they were playing the crappy Panthers, I think that's still like a big thing to count towards the Lions is when people go down, they're still able to get wins.
Yeah, it was a Josh Reynolds, Sam Laporta win and cover for the Lions, right? That is how powerful, and that's, just a testament to how good Jared Goff is, honestly. Jared Goff is playing like a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. If you were to be like, do you want Patrick Mahomes or Jared Goff playing for your team for the rest of the franchise's history? Obviously, I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes.
Jared Goff. What?
But, next week, do I want Jared Goff or Patrick Mahomes? I'm like, it's more of a toss-up. The way some of the ball placement with Jared Goff has just been absolutely incredible. And he's not nearly as flashy as Patrick Mahomes is, but he does have a lot more soothing voice. Moving on. Trying to keep it moving here. We're 15 minutes into the pod. To my next 6 teams, still well within the hunt, at least these first 3 teams, to challenge for the Super Bowl. Number 6, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. And now I have those 3 stats again. Passing yards per attempt for the Chiefs, 15th in the NFL, Lions 5th, Niners 2nd. Chiefs, 16 in rushing touchdowns. They've only had 4 rushing touchdowns, okay? They play in Missouri. It can get a little bit of weathery down there. And when the weather gets weathery, you're going to want to be able to run the damn ball. So that's not a good sign. Lions, 3rd in the NFL. Niners, 2nd in the NFL. And they do have a good defense. 5th in defensive passing yards per attempt. Maybe the referees help them out a little bit here. And honestly, the referees are the only thing keeping them in the top 10 of this list, because if it wasn't for the referees, they'd probably have like 3 losses so far this season. Anyways, moving on to number 7, the Ravens. Their only loss besides the Steelers, so they're 2 losses. Number 1 was to the Minshew Colts. The Minshew Colts are a better football team than the Anthony Richardson Colts at this moment in time, okay? They're never going to be on the top 10 of this list, no matter what, so it's smart for them to be working their rookie, trying to get them to figure it out, so when they are in the Super Bowl window with that roster, they can take advantage of it. Minshew is playing really well for the Colts. That offense, honestly, is kind of more designed for Minshew, especially now that Jonathan Taylor's back and Zach Moss is running like Jahmyr Gibbs should have looked like. I think I think the Ravens losing to the Colts was, not the end of the world. And then the Steelers loss is just like a weird Steelers thing. They had more drops that game since like 2018 in a single game in the NFL. Just like a weird fluky thing. There was really crazy side wind in that game too that was blowing left to right across the stadium, which is why Flowers, I think, missed the deep ball from Lamar. Like bad touchdown drops in the end zone by Mark Andrews and guys that just, you're not going to see that again for the rest of the season. So kind of explaining away their 2 losses, quality loss and just like a fluky loss to a divisional opponent in the Steelers. Number 8, Cincinnati Bengals. I realize they only have 2 wins, but we've kind of seen this story before. Joe Burrow has to face adversity. He just has to have it in the beginning of the season, no matter what it takes. He's got to develop some sort of issue as dogs are barking in other people's areas. Joe Burrow looks all the way back. They wouldn't have been on the top 10 on this list. They would have been in the bottom 5 of this list before Joe Burrow kind of flies back into action last week, and he does. They're all the way back. Even though Joe Burrow is like the only good thing about that team, he's enough to make it go. Number 9, number 10, I kept on flip-flop, and I went with number 9, the Seahawks. Number 10, the Chargers. 2 teams with early buys that we didn't see this week, so we don't know as much about as the rest of the teams. Seahawks beat the Lions at Detroit. 3 turnover differential there, still a quality win. I think the Lions are really good, so I had to stay consistent and put the Seahawks up there. I think they're a good team. And the LA Chargers, 2 of those, their defense is a real issue, but they're 5th in yards per pass attempt, and they're 13th in rushing touchdowns without Eckler on the team. Most of those rushing touchdowns came in like week 1. So I think they're going to have sustainable success no matter what weather they're playing in late in the season. James, I'll kick it to you. Did I leave somebody off the top 10 that you wish I had in there?
Yeah, I think the main thing that I would switch out, I would have taken out the Bengals. I'm just not sure where we're at with Joe Burrow and his injury. I still feel like that's lingering. Wasn't very impressed with that game against the Cardinals either. The Cardinals are not the best team in the world. So I would probably put the Buccaneers in here. I've liked what I've seen from the Buccaneers. They did okay against Philadelphia, which we have as the number 2 team in the entire NFL here. Most of their wins have been decent. I think they have a lot of weapons on offense that Baker Mayfield can get that too still. And so I think they are going to they're definitely going to make the playoffs with that position. But I think they have a decent chance to maybe squeak out of the first round and get to that second. I like them at probably 10 here, the 10th best team, and move everybody else one. tough one, but I think I would replace the Bengals.
Wow. Okay. So Bengals outside of your top 10. By the way, Cardinals, I am a little bit higher on the Cardinals than the rest of the NFL community is. I don't even have them in my bottom 5 teams. Spoiler alert. The Cardinals. They are like the least odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl at this moment in time. Vegas-wise, I don't think they're quite as bad as you think. I mean, again, I don't want to be too much of a homer. I love Baker Mayfield. I was hanging out with Baker Mayfield this weekend at the State Fair while he was on the Pat McAfee show, like 5 minutes from where I'm recording here in Dallas. I don't mind it. I'm still a little bit worried about that offensive line when they face good defenses. I haven't seen them really pick apart a good defense, and I don't think that the Buccaneers defense is quite good enough to carry the team, but I believe in Baker Mayfield. I made a trade for him in Dynasty League late in this offseason, rather, in a Superflex League. I love Baker Mayfield, and I love that you love Baker Mayfield, James. Jacob Marshall, what do you think? I got Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals, Seahawks, Chargers as my 5 to 10 team.
Yeah, I think I've been on record on this podcast. I think maybe week 2 I was saying, let's not hit the panic button on the Bengals yet.
Yeah.
This happens every year. But even with that being said, I think you can't have the last place team in a division in your top 10 on a power ranking list. Get them out. So, I think they'll be there by the end of the year. But right now, they're 2-3. Okay, they shouldn't be. What's up?
So my criteria is end of season. Who do I think has a chance to win the Super Bowl? Not necessarily today on a neutral site field who wins a football game. So that's why I have them maybe a little bit elevated because of that criteria. But Go ahead and finish your thought, Jacob.
Okay, well, that's fair. I agree. I think by the end of the year, Bengals are there. Right now, not so much. I don't love the Ravens at all this year. I think losing to the Steelers is rough. I know the Steelers are 3-2, but I don't. That's just Mike Tomlin. Okay, that's not. That's not the talent on the team. That is just great coaching. And I'm going to be the one to say it, and y'all are all going to hate me. I think we need the Cowboys at number 10. I think. And here's the deal. I don't think the Cowboys are that great. I'm not even a Cowboys fan, but your only losses this year are to the 49ers, which we're all agreeing is the best team in football right now. And then a bad loss to the Cardinals, admittedly. I think if there's anything the Cowboys love on this planet more than not winning Super Bowls, it's bounce back games, baby. And I think they're about to go into, and I almost said San Diego, go into Los Angeles, and I think they're about to smoke the Chargers. So
on Monday night. Okay. So you said who have the Cowboys lost to. I'll turn that around on you. The Cowboys have blown out the Patriots. They've blown out
who you have
the
listed
Jets.
as your worst team. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Like,
and they've
it's not that impressive.
The Giants. Okay.
that's his point.
So I appreciate your spirit. But man, I can't talk myself into putting the Cowboys as I sit here in Dallas, Texas, where I own property. Okay. 3 bathrooms. Just saying.
Your values are definitely congruent with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I'll come to Jacob's. Sorry. Go ahead.
What do we do with Dak, Jacob Marshall? Is he going to win a Super Bowl? It's Super Bowl champion criteria.
Oh, I'm aware of that, but I don't think the Ravens are winning one. I don't think the Seahawks are winning one, and I don't think the Chargers are winning one this year either. So,
okay, that's a fair. I think they have a better chance of winning the Super Bowl. Miles, what were you going to say, buddy?
I want to come in and defend Jacob a little bit. I think logically it would make the most sense that we put the Cowboys in the top 10 this week and then the bottom 5 next week, and we just alternate them back and forth for the rest of the season. I think that's the way that it feels. Honestly, as much as I agreed with your top 5, Jamie, I feel like the second half is way, way muddier. I will say I even think that the Chiefs are arguably overrated on this list. They have also just been too inconsistent. If they did not have the referees firmly playing their 12th man in at least 2 games, they would not have the record that they do right now. It feels weird that you have, again, the Ravens, who are technically tied for first with the Steelers in their division. But the Steelers just feel like dog water. And the fact that you have the Ravens and not the Steelers feels weird there too. Joe Burrow, my most regretted fantasy football pick this season, just has been absolute trash. He has no team around him other than the one receiver that's always fucking open. And then the other one is the Seahawks. I think you might actually have the Seahawks maybe a little underrated. Ooh. I feel like that's a really weird division as well, because they are, I mean, like if you look at those rankings, you look at who they've beat and whatnot, they're first of all not going to win their division because they're with the 49ers. So they're going to have to go for, earning their berth another way. That whole NFC West is just really strange looking at it, because the Cardinals, I feel like, are better than 1-4, and none of them are as good as the 49ers. So I would bump up the Seahawks maybe a little bit. We'll see how they come back from their bye week. I would definitely drop the Bengals and the Ravens. And again, I even think you have the Chiefs a little bit overrated.
Okay. I love it. Anything else on my top 10, gang? Nope. Cool. So let's talk about the bottom 5, which I mean, this is a great list. I love this list. I'm going to start, because it's the most exciting at the end, I'm going to start with my 5th worst NFL team, my 5th most likely team to end in last place in the NFL, and that is the Denver Broncos. A historically bad defense. This is the only bad defense handicap that I have in the bottom 5. The rest of them, it's more of like a global issue, an organizational issue, or an offensive issue, or kind of all 3. The Broncos defense is just so bad. And it doesn't make any sense why they are that bad, because they got good pieces. Like Surtain's still playing well. It's just everything around him is just an absolute clusterfuck. Silver lining, the offense is playing all right, which is sort of encouraging, because that was kind of the issue last year. So maybe they just need to get personnel in. I honestly don't know what's wrong with that Broncos defense, but their offense is playing all right, and that's why I have them at 5th and not lower on the list. My 4th worst team in the NFL is the Panthers. They are bad, right? The Lions did beat the shit out of them, and we're goofing around, getting Craig Reynolds a touchdown in garbage time. Just making them look absolutely awful. Bryce Young looks like maybe the 3rd best. I mean, I guess 2nd best if you add in durability, although he's been injured already too, right? And they're ironically their best game with the red rifle throwing the football around the field. I think Bryce Young, best case scenario, is going to take a year or 2 to develop into something significant. Never a good sign when Adam Thielen, the corpse of Adam Thielen, is far head and shoulders above every other wide receiver on the team, including Jonathan Mingo, who is supposed to be a superstar coming out of college. Don't know what's going on there. Just makes me feel bad about the whole situation organizationally. Don't feel like anybody is in good hands there. So that's why I have the Panthers there. Following the Panthers, with superstar genius head coach that Josh Allen was going to be able to do nothing without at the Bills, Brian Daboll and the Giants, they're just horrible. They're hopeless. They keep on getting blown out offensively, defensively, quarterback. Saquon maybe comes back. I don't think he necessarily changes that offense in any significant way. They have no weapons at receiver. Even Darren Waller looks really disappointing this year. There's no real redeeming qualities about the Giants at the moment that I can think of. So I have them 3rd worst team in the NFL. 2nd worst team in the NFL, the Chicago Bears. Now, they looked amazing last week. They looked really, really good last week. Justin Fields ran the ball 11 times. Still, that defense is going to be horrible. The defense is not improving anytime soon. Even if that offense picks it up, they're not going to be able to beat any good team in the NFL. So I'm going to keep the Bears low down. I bumped them up one spot to make room for the new worst team in the NFL for probably the next 10 or 20 years, if I had to guess. The New England Patriots. And it's just going to start at Bill Belichick. Like, I think we've seen the signs over the past maybe 2, 3, 4 years that Bill Belichick has kind of lost his fastball. I'm hearing things from my sources that are telling me that things aren't great in the locker room, leadership-wise. There's more stuff than people are kind of admitting publicly at the moment. What do we say about all of Bill Belichick's disciples that go out and try and be a head football coach in the NFL? They all can't do it because they're all not Bill Belichick. There's only one person who get away with it, and that's Bill Belichick, because it's just a new time. You got to respect the players. You got to treat them well. And I think Bill Belichick is a little bit old school, and he's gotten by with it because he's won football games. But at some point, you got to be like, hey, dude, you got Matt Patricia running your offense, and he just drove the Detroit Lions offense into the ground, who had Matt Stafford the whole time for 4 or 5 years. And you got to be like, man, what are we doing for the Patriots? Mac Jones, I don't know if it's his fault. I don't think it is. He's definitely not helping the situation. Offensive line is trash. They can't score touchdowns on the ground. Ramondre Stevenson has had a horrible season so far. And the defense just hasn't been good against anybody except for Zach Wilson for the Jets, which is like the most predictable win of all time. 2 of the worst Patriots defeats back-to-back. I bet on the Patriots last week to have a bounce-back week because that's historically what Bill Belichick has done. That was not a historical Bill Belichick bounce-back, and for that reason, the Patriots are the worst team in the NFL and most likely to finish the season in last place. Miles, what do you think about my bottom 5?
I don't know that I think you probably have the right teams. I don't think you have the right order. I cannot understand your justification of putting the Patriots up top there. First of all, if you look at their schedule, they've easily had the hardest schedule of the teams that you've listed there. All of their losses, except for one, come from the list above in your top 10, including the Dolphins and the Eagles. So, I mean, like, tougher teams that they're taking these L's to, for sure. Yeah, sure, Belichick is not what he used to be. I still think, though, that there's enough on that team that puts them at least better than the Bears and for sure the Broncos and the Giants. The Giants, to me, probably would be number 1 just because their O-line is so bad that it doesn't matter how much talent you put on that team. You can't do anything if you can't get a second and a half to start a play. The Broncos, historically bad as well. Just really, really, they've got some moments, I guess, where they've shown offensive, strength, but their only win is against Chicago Bears before they made their comeback tour last week. And actually, that's the one team I think is lacking. I would probably, I don't know what team I would have to drop off there. Probably the Panthers, but I think the Commanders are way worse than all of you are giving them credit for. I said this during the game on Thursday night. The Commanders, to me, are not showing any signs of being a cohesive unit. They've got talent, but other than their tight end and their running back and a couple of younger receivers, they're not clicking. They're not getting anything together.
Terry, Miles.
Terry's amazing. I'll give you that, but you got to be able to consistently get him, in the action, and they're not.
Yeah, I would say so. Patriots, yeah. So I guess some quality losses early on in the season. Eagles week 1, Dolphins week 2. Kind of kept it close in both of those games early on in the season. Granted, get a great win, 15-10 against the Jets. But then their last 2 losses are really the damning ones, Miles. Cowboys, not in my top 10.
Depends on which week you're playing them. As we talked about, they bounce back and forth.
They are the yo-yo team of the NFL. But 38-3 against the Cowboys, I mean, the Cowboys defense is good, but it's not like historically good like we might have thought they were after 2 weeks of this season. And the Saints, man, they're not a good football team. They're not a top 10 football team. Granted, that offense is fine, but that defense isn't dominant anymore. 0 points Patriots in my little metric that I established early on are third worst in yards per attempt passing offense. Panthers, by the way, in second place, and last place is the Bengals, who did make my top 10, to be fair to y'all. Only had one game of success. But anyways, Jacob Marshall, what do you think?
So it's actually interesting, Miles. You said you would take the Panthers out of the bottom 5. I actually think the Panthers should be the bottom of the bottom 5.
Whoa.
They haven't won a single game, and realistically, they're playing in the second worst division in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just looking at their losses, they lost to the Vikings, the Falcons, and the Saints. That's 3 of their 5 losses. Granted,
that's fair.
Seahawks and Lions, losing to them makes sense, but losing those 3. My other argument, and this is a hot take, but I think we should just put the entire AFC South as one category in the bottom 5. It's we're all bad. The Jaguars, granted, just beat the Bills, but that was a home game essentially in London. That's their home field.
So I'll meet you there. Yeah.
And all of their wins are going to come interdivision. It happens every year, and they always lose first round of the playoffs. It's a terrible division. And I would just love for every single one of them to be in the bottom 5.
So I wonder what the odds are to have the Colts win this division, because they're going to have Minshew the rest of the season. Does anybody disagree with me that the Colts team is currently better with Minshew than with Anthony Richardson? Does anybody disagree with me? Looking around, everyone agrees with me on that, right? So maybe we're thinking rest of season, take the win total over and maybe for them to win the division. I wonder what those odds might be. My only other pushback is, CJ Stroud's looked fine up until last week, and Vrabel is still coaching the Titans. But yeah, that's a pretty horrible division.
Even with Vrabel, we're basing that off of his success in the AFC South. For a long time there, he was getting 5 to 6 free wins a season, and they'd win 9 games, 10 games, get into the playoffs, but half of their wins would be freebies, essentially.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a division that Bill Belichick dominated for 20 years with the best quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
Leading the way. Anyways, James, what do you think?
I definitely agree with Miles. I don't feel that the Patriots are the worst team on this list purely because I think they have the most ability to get out of this. I do think Bill O'Brien can turn it around with Mac Jones. Good connection there.
You don't say.
I do feel that this defense is fairly good. I feel like they've put up some impressive showings. I feel like they just sort of gave up against things halfway through that game. All that being said, they're still in the bottom 5 for sure right now. I just feel like they have the most ability to get out of it. I think the Panthers are definitely the worst. They just seem to be in the hole. It's going to be a learning year for Bryce Young. He's still got to work a little bit on the scrambling. I'm seeing some improvements from him, but I think they're probably the farthest away and probably have the least side. I think it's just going to be a development for Bryce Young, and we're going to be the end of it for the Panthers.
Got you. And James, where did you go to college?
Alabama, University of Alabama.
Oh, okay. And you think the Patriots aren't the worst team because of Mac Jones and Billy O'Brien?
Look, I've not been a fan of Bill O'Brien when he was at the University of Alabama. I think he's a much better NFL offensive coordinator than he is a college offensive coordinator. But if there's anybody that I know that light a fire under you, even more scary than Nick Saban when they're angry, it's definitely Bill Belichick.
Oh yeah, all right. I love.
So it. I do like the timeline of Bill Belichick being fired and becoming defensive coordinator of Alabama in a couple of years. So I will kind of hold that hope.
Yeah, I guess I don't think they're going to be able to fire Bill Belichick. I don't want to see them fire Bill Belichick, just out of respect for what Bill Belichick, with all jokes aside, I would like to see Bill Belichick gracefully maybe retire or step down, or, become some executive in charge of personnel scouting department or something with the Patriots and let somebody else take the reins here. Because it doesn't seem like his heart's in it like it used to be. back when they were trying to get revenge games on Tom Brady and stuff after he leaves. Anyways, moving on. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and a subscribe and a comment if you think my power ratings are dumb. Thank you. Good night.